Hello Targar friends, hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for another Orc Mode workout. Today was a max effort upper day, but a quick reminder for those of you who watch these videos, please click like down below. It would be greatly appreciated, and we're going to have some major changes today. People are going to be like, you're doing all 20 rep sets. Yes, other than my training maxes. Now, I went with medium grip today because the more I look at it, it is a better leverage angle for me. I tend to be stronger close grip. I need to build a little bit of the medium grip, and I need to keep working on my pecs and pec tendons. And one of the things that I notice with a lot of this is that I feel a lot of pec tendon pain when I bench. I always have. And I've done so much tendon work for other things like low back, hamstrings, all this other stuff that ended up giving me amazingly good squatting and deadlifting and good mornings. I don't think any reasonable person is going to argue I'm not at the elite level for my age and weight class on those, right? You can't even argue that. And, you know, I got a lot out of that stuff. It carried over all the tendon work. For people who notice on that bench on this training max, yes, I'm not used to the medium grip, and using the bands, it made me slip out of my groove. And then I went ahead and locked it out. You guys noticed it was a little catawampus on the way up. Bar stopped for a minute. Bar shifted out of its groove, and I locked it through. But even though I felt tons of chest, the way that bar drifted would indicate to me as a coach that, again, some tricep weakness there still. And we know I need more arms, right? No surprise there. So it's not a shock that we should see that. I went ahead and did the axle bar floor press for the second training max, got a minor PR. I'm going to try to work this up a little bit, then I'll rotate to some chains. I really want to mess with the axle bar for a bit on this. And I mean, I could always go over to the straight bar. It's fine. But the axle bar is a little bit different. Lets me involve the arms and forearms and stuff a little bit more. You know, it's very orky, very orc mode, right? I'm going to use these big, thick axle bars. So we ended up getting 307.5. And, you know, some people who haven't been following the vlogs are like, well, your bench has gone down a bit. Yes, and we've covered all that in the past, guys. There's a lot going on there. A lot of it has to do with re-inflaming my shoulders, doing lifts I probably shouldn't do. They're feeling a lot better now, and I'm going to continue with that trend. But we're not going to hit true maxes. Those are training maxes. Those are training maxes. And in all honesty, for all we know, I've never been stronger than that, really, at medium grip. I don't know. I need to go check my logs. I tend to be with bands. On pressing, I tend to be equal to my maxes with the bands. In other words, if my max bench is 350 at a time, I'm not doing more than 300 pounds on the bar with 50 pounds of bands. I just can't, because I tend to be limited by my lockouts. So whatever the top half of the rep is, which is what bands are. Bands, people need to keep that in mind. The bands are engaged by the halfway point. So if you have 50 pounds of band tension, that's not just the lockout. You're hitting that 50 pounds by the time you're midway up. Right around where you saw that point stick for me, that bar shift. So what's up? So, 20s. 20s. And, you know, I've said before, a lot of it has to do with tendons, and then also we could argue about hypertrophy. At the end of the day, hypertrophy is hypertrophy, and our strength then comes from doing heavy singles. That is where you actualize your strength potential. And even though on the benching I peaked really well and ended up getting a 352 again by doing a bunch of triples, it also beat me up. It beat me up. And I shouldn't have to do that to get my bench up past that point. So the thing that I noticed, the more rep work I do for a lot of the lifts, I don't really get any sort of pain or soreness. I don't feel beat up. And I've noticed that when I was doing all the really high rep reverse hypers and good mornings and glute ham raises, the stuff that built all those massive lower body lifts for me. And then I toughened up. In other words, my low back, my hamstrings, all that stuff are pretty well bulletproof. And there's a lot of data looking at a lot of this stuff out there in tendon hypertrophy. Okay? There's data on tendon hypertrophy. And you know what? Tendons also tend to correlate with type 1 muscle fibers a lot. Very, very high reps tend to hypertrophy tendons, and that affects our strength potential. I honestly have started to wonder if my tendon size and tendon health hasn't been limiting me on the bench. And we know how well this works for my lower body stuff. And you know what? I felt one hell of a pump. I'm going to say on each of these sets of 20, because again, I'm programming all of this based upon, you know, rough maxes and things. programming it. This isn't randomly picked. The last 5 reps were really hard. They were really hard. And you know what? My pecs and triceps were lit up on these. Normally, even with something like a medium grip bench, I mean, I'll feel a lot of chest and front delt, but I don't feel as much tricep. My triceps were pumped. My chest was pumped. This stuff is legitimately challenging. And let's come over to the point. We don't get a lot of the benefits from the low rep training when we're also doing maxes with it. And again, I'm going to run with this for a while. This has worked extremely well on lower body lifts to the point where I've changed all my lower body lifts to it, because it works so well for things like the good mornings and the reverse hypers. It made me stupidly strong on good mornings. Guys, I'm good morninging 545 pounds. I can squat 600 pounds now. All that high rep stuff paid off. Paid off a lot. It paid off massively. And I can tell things like my pec tendons get inflamed really easy. I think this is what we need to do. We need to do this whole thing for the upper body. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of pump work. And you know what? There would have been a time on my channel where I would have been rolling in my grave that I'd be doing 20 rep sets. My God. But you know what? I didn't know as much back then. I've learned a lot. I've talked to a lot of amazing, amazing coaches. I've coached full time. Guys, I have on average up to 25 clients at any given time, and I've been doing that for well over a year. It's my full-time thing. I'm coaching lifters and athletes 7 days a week. I've learned a lot. My God, have I learned a lot, and I have a lot more to learn. And you know, I stopped there on the floor press. The floor press was easier. It wasn't as hard, but I realized I'm going to get pec DOMs tomorrow. I stopped at 4 sets, a total 20 for the chest. And for 2 training maxes, we're at a point where we're growing from that, especially with hard sets. And I decided to do some Skullcrushers. Now, these still feel a little funny on my right shoulder, so it's a little hard to get in my groove, and it feels actually good now. But as I was kind of getting into my groove, it was a little crackly. I had to kind of move it a little bit, do a little bit of just movement and stuff for my shoulder. But these, again, so someone asked, why don't you go further back? Why are you doing me as a Skullcrusher? Well, because one, this is better for your bench. Number 2, as far as the shoulder extension goes, my shoulder doesn't like it. My shoulder doesn't like me to do anything above my head, and that would count as above my head. That includes incline benching. Incline benching almost feels like it close to re-injured my shoulder again. So these are things I'm just going to avoid. And I have to continue to build my rear delts and infraspinatus and stuff up. Those, again, those sort of mobility issues we run into, they're muscle imbalances. Okay? And I have strong anterior deltoids. My anterior deltoids build up real quick. So I've got to keep those things balanced. So it's going to be a lot of rear delt work, a lot of pulling, you know, and we're continuing to work on all of that. But in the meantime, these I just did really 40 pounds. I'd calculated based upon my last 10 rep sets, I probably should have done 42, but I'm like, let me just start with 40. And yeah, I got over 20 reps on the second and third set. So, but they were still challenging. So I'll probably bump the weight on this one a hair next time. But I think next time too, I'll do 3 sets of the floor press. The main thing is that my chest got a tremendous pump from it, even though it wasn't as hard as the medium grip pause benching. It was not as hard, even on the same percentages. And I find that's true with my lifters. And my lifters, when we program percentages off floor press, they can do like endless sets. It's not the same as the other lifts. For some reason, and I don't know why, if I were to take your max floor press and your max bench and tell you, hey, you know, do X number of sets at X percentage, my guys can always do more. They have more left in the tank. Like, I've literally had clients who I prescribed them 3 sets at a certain percentage, and it's hard for them to do on a squat or a bench, and even on their bench. But that same percentage of their floor press max, they can do 5 sets easily, whether it's programming 5s, 10s, whatever. They can just bang through it. So it was interesting when I got there. I felt like I had not reached really failure, but I also realized my chest was really pumped. I'm not used to this type of training. I am probably going to be sore tomorrow. Let's ease into it. We'll ease into it gradually. So we'll increase the total sets next time We got some novel training response here, some unique stimulus, because I don't do high reps for my upper body like this, other than just the tricep band press downs. So it's all different. Same thing with the rows. I programmed off of my last sets of 10, assumed they were 70% of my max. And so we went with 50%, did 160. Decently challenging for 3 sets. And yeah, I'm going to cap stuff at 3 sets for the most part, because that's really, beyond that, it's hard to continue to do the correct amount of work. And if we're having to drop weight to do it, it's a problem. And if we're going so light that the first couple sets suck, then we should have added weight and just done less sets. So I'm going to do mostly 3 sets of 20 on all these things. And again, programmed correctly with enough exercise variation, I think it's going to work just fine. So again, I supersetted these because I'm only doing 3 and 3. I only did 6 sets of the band press downs instead of my 10. But I added a smaller tricep exercise first that is a little bit heavier tension. So we went ahead and did the 3 sets of Skullcrushers, and then we get the 9 sets of band press downs to again get blood flow, tendons, active recovery. But it all went pretty good. The rows were reasonably challenging with this, reasonably challenging, and I think I managed to get 1 extra rep on the last set. So I'll probably micro-load this up from here. And yes, I am doing these supine for, again, the extra bicep work, because I need more bicep, and I threw in some curls today because let's be honest here. Triceps need to take priority, but I need more direct bicep work. I feel like more bicep at this point in the game will help my benching. It's an important stabilizer. We can also press against it at the bottom. So I even did some 20 rep curls again, and I've done those in the past. But let's come over to that point. Those bicep tendons and deadlifts. I mean, I'm trying to get to a 700-pound deadlift now. It's going to be one of my goals, 700-pound squat, 700-pound deadlift. Hey, bicep tendons matter. And if we can build some extra bicep tendon, great. And I feel like sometimes with these supine grip rows, which I really want to get these in to work this different angle, my bicep can be a limiting factor. So again, if I get real strong at some 20 rep sets and build my work capacity in those biceps, it will improve these rows. Because of course I do the overhand grip with the axle bar on my lower days, as you guys know who watch those. But I'm doing the supine grip on these days. And again, it's a little bit better grip training. Again, works more total muscles, right? We're getting a little bit more muscle involved. We could argue it hits a little more lat and a little less upper back than most rows, arguably. But because I do the other type of rows and then I do the snatch grip hang pulls and stuff, I don't think we're getting a real shortage issue with the upper back. And it still works the upper back decently well. We're still getting all the rear delts and things. But then we hit all that really hard with the hang pulls and then the overhand grip rows on the other day. But yeah, these were getting hard. I was struggling to complete a lot of these because, again, my triceps were a little more fatigued than usual because I did that extra direct tricep work first, which, again, we need. We'll do more direct arm work, which, again, I feel like I need it at this point. I need it. Bigger arms will improve my benching all the way around, triceps and biceps both. Triceps more so. But again, the triceps are getting more attention because if we look at it and you just look at all of my work, my bicep and tricep work is basically equal before all those band press downs. So the band press downs are putting the priority towards triceps. Then, as you guys notice, what are we doing? Snatch grip hang pulls. Again, we calculated off my other 10 rep sets. So I dropped down to 135 for sets of 20. These burned. Now, I felt like the first set was crappy. The third set, I felt like I really got into my groove with the higher reps, and it felt good. It was nice and clean. But as I'm getting near the end, these are really fatiguing. And I know people are like, you're doing a power exercise for 20. Isn't that counterintuitive? Not really. Not when we're doing it for hypertrophy. Because, again, the eccentric overload on the shoulders. Because we are exploding and using a leg drive and using an explosive movement. And again, 20, it still will improve our explosiveness. It still counts. It's not optimized for explosive programming, right? But we'll still be able to get it for all the first reps. We're getting a leg drive, and then we have an overloaded eccentric rep. Because I'm having to do 20 eccentrics with 135 for 3 sets. So it ends up being 60 reps. Okay. That's a lot of shoulder girdle. activation. A lot of shoulder girdle activation from a hypertrophy perspective. And that's one of the things lifts like this that people forget. They look at these lifts and they don't realize why they work for hypertrophy. Why do Olympic lifters use these as a hypertrophy lift? Because it builds the exact muscles of their snatches and cleans when they do hang pulls and snatch grip hang pulls and things. But without the technique component, they can do more workload. They can lift a heavier weight because they don't have to catch it. Okay? It makes it a more muscly movement in terms of muscle use instead of technique, but it builds the muscles that they need, because it's very hard to hypertrophy off snatches and cleans because of the technical component of them. They're not the best hypertrophy movements. These will hypertrophy all those muscles. But yeah, there's an enormous eccentric overload. There's an enormous eccentric overload component. And I can tell you with sets of 20, my shoulders are definitely feeling it. Okay, definitely feeling it. So yeah, we're going to be doing this stuff this way. And I know people are like, oh my God, Blaha is almost bodybuilding. Not really. Because it's not bodybuilding, it's just hypertrophy training. People say that stuff and they don't understand there's a difference. Bodybuilding and hypertrophy are not the same thing. A bodybuilding is a competitive endeavor where you shave your body, you starve yourself down to unhealthy levels of body fat, and you oil yourself up and you pose in a competitive environment. Building muscle is, if we wanted to call it competitive, I could call it powerlifting. Why? Because hypertrophy matters for maximum strength. Why can't we just call if we wanted to put it in a competitive endeavor, why couldn't we just call it powerlifting? Why couldn't we call it strongman? Why can't we call it football, like American football? Why can't we call it rugby? Can't we call it wrestling? Why is it bodybuilding? Right? If you're going to pick a competitive endeavor, all these other endeavors need hypertrophy, and powerlifters need maximum hypertrophy. That is a fact. Anyone who doesn't understand that, not been around the serious levels of the sport. And all the long timers do a lot of hypertrophy type training. The people who are in it for the long haul do. And I have friends dropping out. I'm not going to name names, but I see one of my friends now. I had a friend for many years. Way too much heavy specific work. Nothing. He never does 10s, never does 20s. Doesn't even do variations of the squat, bench, and deadlift. He's beat up. He's not training anymore as of recently. He doesn't train. And he was a coach. I've known him for like 7 or 8 years. We talk all the time, but I saw him on Facebook. He's not even training. That's it. He's out of the game. He's beat up. And his goal had always been to get to a 600 squat. He never got it. He got to his 595 and he never got his 600 squat. And he's beat up. Look at the guys who are in it. They do a lot of rep work. Saw another powerlifting coach who kind of said the same thing. He's putting up some big numbers. He's like, well, if you're going to be in the long game, you're doing a lot of 10 by 10s. You're not doing a lot of 3 by 3s. And that's while running conjugate. It's a conjugate guy. You know. It comes down to your tendons and your joints. We can handle the maxing. Guys, you can handle the maxing. The maxing doesn't beat you up as long as you control it and you rotate movements. The 3s and the 5s start to beat you up. So to me, it's not bodybuilding, guys. This is maximizing hypertrophy, maximizing body composition. Something I'm going to have to do. If I want to reach the levels that I want to reach coming up in Masters 2, I have to focus on those things. I've got to build muscle. I'll have to burn some body fat down to make sure I make weight as I gain more and more muscle. Going to have to pay attention to tendons. Tendons are going to be critical, and I've learned that a lot with my low back and everything. It's worked wonders. Now we got to do all of it for the upper body too. To do the same thing, guys. Take it up to another level. Keep moving forward. Keep improving. Keep learning. Keep adapting. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.